Hello, everybody. My name's Simon Verona. Welcome today to my special interview session where we delve into the world of electric vehicles. I'm delighted to be joined by my very special guest, Kevin Booker. Kevin holds several EV-related Guinness World Records, including, I believe, the longest distance travelled on a single charge and the most efficient EV run. Recently, he completed the annual London to Brighton EV run, showcasing the incredible efficiency and capabilities of modern electric vehicles. Kevin's been instrumental in helping with the transition to electric vehicles, working closely with car dealerships and organisations to simplify the shift from internal combustion engines to EVs. He collaborates with brands on record-breaking events, focusing on efficiency and showcasing the incredible potential of electric vehicles. Additionally, Kevin produces rich content on electric vehicles, with a particular focus on efficiency and pushing the boundaries of what can be achieved. So after that long introduction, Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. First, about the Guinness World Records. What got you into those, and why do them all? What was it all about?
I mean, lots of it started basically because I used to do quite a long trip to the office, which was about 70 miles round trip. So I've always started to push the boundaries with fueled cars to see if I could get more distance with actually using less fuel. And that kind of went on to started doing some events called the MPG Marathon, which was run by Fleet World magazine. And that kind of got me into it with petrol cars, and then kind of the transition then to electric, and actually just sort of seeing if I can get further and further out of those. And the early electric cars didn't have much range, so you had to optimize the vehicles and optimize the range to get to your destination. Back in 2015, started with a Renault Zoe, and we ended up driving from Swansea to Leicester regularly to visit my wife's family. And with that, you had to get it right because you had to push it to the edges of range, because otherwise you'd spend most of your time on a charger. A lot easier than that now, though.
Yeah, it certainly is a lot easier. I mean, I'm also an electric car owner, and getting around the country nowadays is reasonably trivial now. Certainly less charging has got to be better. Anyway, today, Kevin, we're going to be looking at 5 key questions that many customers, when they walk into a car showroom or are considering an electric vehicle, will be asking. So I'm hoping we're using your expertise to help us understand the best way, from a sales perspective, handling those questions so that the customer gets the right answer and can make the right decision. Diving straight in, I think the first question that a lot of people who aren't used to electric cars, haven't owned an electric car, when they walk into the showroom, the very first question they're likely to ask is, how do I charge this car? How do I get this thing charged?
I mean, this is an important thing to consider, because what you don't want to do is force someone into an electric car that maybe is not ready for it. The ideal way and the cheapest way to charge an electric car is to have a home charger that you can set a timer to take advantage of off-peak tariffs and actually maximize the savings you have. So if someone came to me and said, I've got a terraced house, there's no chargers around, you wouldn't go and try and sell them an EV, because all you're going to get is someone who's really unhappy because you've pushed them into it. And there are a lot of good, hybrid vehicles that might suit them better. So the key is to sort of identify, can they have home charging, and make sure that, and explain to them, it's really easy. Have a charger there to show them how you'd plug into a proper charger. And the other thing I've tended to discourage is people using the 3-pin chargers, just to explain they are really occasional use chargers. You wouldn't really want to charge your car off it all the time, especially with vehicles with much bigger batteries. The efficiency is not quite as good on a small 3-pin charger. And also, if you look at something like the Mustang Mach-E we did the record in, that's got a 91 kilowatt hour battery pack. So if you were to charge that off a 3-pin plug, you'd be there for over 30 hours. So it's just kind of learning and identifying with the customer what's best for them, and make sure if an EV is right for them, just explain how they can get the best out of it, and showing them that, but just not going down the route of saying everything should be an EV. There's still certain things to be considered.
Yeah, I agree. Would go 100% with that. The second question, I think, is really, one of the key kind of fear and uncertainty items that, as you see a lot in the press, and people talk a lot about, is the fear of batteries failure and the expense of that, and the question that comes from that is, in the real world, how long does the battery on an electric car actually last?
If you look at most of the manufacturers, generally they've got an 8-year warranty on the battery anyway, so you don't need to even worry about that, because the battery is covered for the big life of the car. Because you've still got to remember that electric cars still have standard suspension and everything, so there's certain things which are no different from a fuel car. So what you need to do with that is just sort of explain to them that the battery's warranty for long periods of time. And actually, from my experience of owning EVs for long periods of time, so we had a 2015 Zoe. So that was rapid charge for the first 3 years of its life, because it was when Ecotricity network was free. So there was an Ecotricity charger 2 miles up the road. So the entire first 3 years of that Zoe's life, it was rapid charged all the time. And when we got rid of it back in 2020, of 5 years old, the battery was still at 5 years old, was still at 98% state of health. So, and that was really early battery chemistry. And Nissan and a load of companies have done research on the batteries, and they're not failing as quickly as they'd expect. So they're expecting a lifespan of like potentially 20 years. So the battery is likely to outlast your car or your interest in the car.
Yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, I've seen that as an owner over the last 7 or 8 years, that the cars now, batteries just don't seem to degrade at all. You get a little bit from new in the first year, and then they just level off. You just don't lose any range at all, which is, I think, great. And certainly the future seems to suggest it will last a lot longer. And we can't forget, of course, that once the battery's finished its use in its car, it's not dead. It's got plenty of secondary use, and it still has a great value in there as well.
I mean, that's the disadvantage you've got with the batteries lasting so long at the moment. There hasn't been a chance for the recycling industry to build up, because there just isn't the supply of used batteries. Once you take out ones from cars that have been damaged, are being used on to convert classics and everything, there's just not the supply to make it worthwhile. The biggest issue with non-recycling of lithium-ion batteries is things like your mobile phone, which, because they're disposable, and that's where I think a lot of people get the idea the batteries don't last very long, is because they compare it to their mobile phone, where the battery starts to degrade after a year or two. But the thing you can remember with that is the mobile phone battery isn't actively cooled. So it's basically, because they want it to be a consumer device, it's treated quite badly, the battery, whereas exactly. An EV doesn't do that.
Yeah, they're designed to die, aren't they? Phone batteries. Yeah. I think that's what a lot of where people kind of think of. You buy your mobile phone, 2 years later, the battery is cracked. Whereas obviously a car has got proper battery management, better quality of battery to start with, a lot more of them, and it's designed to live.
And they're not pushing the boundaries of battery on a car like they are on a mobile phone. Exactly. So if you notice, most electric cars have a usable capacity and a gross capacity. So you actually keep it in the sweet spot for lithium-ion technology. And you look at some of the lithium-ion phosphate, they can go even deeper cycles, and they look like they're going to be lasting even longer.
Well, I think the longer the recycling industry doesn't start up, the better, I think. I think it is. Okay, thanks for that. The third question, the question that I get asked all the time, I used to have I also thought about having a T-shirt printed with the 3 questions. One of the questions was always, how far does it go? How far can you drive in an electric car without stopping?
The biggest thing, if you take the Mustang Mach-E record, we got over 500 miles between charges on that. I mean, obviously a lot of it's to do with driving style. The biggest barrier to long range in an EV is actually their performance. Because they are so quick, people do drive them quickly. That's why when you get people saying it's got higher tire wear, it's not got higher tire wear, but you think it's got the tire wear of a car with 600 brake horsepower in the case of like an Ioniq 5N. So it's all about how you need to drive it like a normal car. Just because it can go off the lights in sub 3 seconds doesn't mean you have to.
It doesn't mean you should. Yes, indeed. I always use the phrase, my stock answer to that question, how far does it go? I always go as far as my bladder can go, and then link that to and then it can go again very quickly thereafter. And it doesn't have to go any further than you can drive without stop. So
that's
200 miles or so is more than enough.
Yeah, that's the biggest development with EVs, is actually their charging speed. When we were back in 2015 with the Renault Zoe, 43 kilowatt hours was considered quickly, but I've been testing EV9, my own Ioniq 5. I get really annoyed when a car doesn't charge at 200 kilowatts.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. I did a recent journey from my home up in West Yorkshire down to Brighton and back in the day, which is a 505-mile round trip, and my stationary time was just over 32 minutes, which was basically 3 toilet stops on the way down and way back. And the speed of the chargers and understanding you don't sit there waiting it go from 0 to 100 every time. You just need to get enough to get you to your next time you need to stop, and off it goes.
Well, I had the EV9 on test a number of weeks ago, and just to put in perspective, I stopped at one of the 350 kilowatt Ionity chargers, and in 6 minutes I got more charge than the whole Renault Zoe battery would have held. So
yeah, I was something that I charge too quickly. You've not got time to go in and get your coffee.
I know you're at 100%, and if you're a Tesla owner, you're getting your idle charges because you've got to 100% and you're still waiting for your food order.
Been there, done that. I've been sat at McDonald's waiting for my food, knowing that the car's bloody full already. Which I guess nicely links into question number four. We've talked about already about charging at home and the essential of being able to charge at home, or at worst, charge at work. Without having those available to you, I think car ownership, we're all agreed that EV ownership is a lot more difficult, not impossible, but more difficult. But when you're on the road and you're doing the long journeys, or you're out and about, how do we charge in public? How do I get around the country?
I mean, your friend on that would be ZapMap if you're new to it. I mean, I've got to the level now where I kind of just wing it. And actually, with the Hyundai Nav system, it's live connected one, so it kind of tells you charges en route and everything. So you end up with looking at charges. You just say, "Where am I near?" So the example when I was in the EV9, which has a similar system to the Hyundai, I was like, "Oh, I need a charger." So I just put on the chargers en route, and it listed all of them and told me the speed. And actually, some of them it actually tells you if they're available.
Yeah.
So it's got much cleverer like that. So it's all about just knowing it. But actually, and pricing can be a factor. They are quite expensive to public charge. But there are some new disruptors to the market. The fact that Tesla have opened a lot of their chargers to everyone and have off-peak pricing, like the London to Brighton one, we charged the Corsa E on 2 Tesla chargers at Reading services and paid 43 pence. And the Tesla ones were all empty and the ones opposite weren't. And you're thinking that's double the price pretty much. So it's all about just using ZapMap and looking at the prices and things.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, as a long-term Tesla owner, the hidden advantage of Tesla was always its in-car integration with its supercharger network. You knew that you could just close your eyes, get in the car, tell it where you wanted to go, and the car will tell you where to charge its own superchargers on the way. And it was, well, at one point it was free. Even now it's pretty competitive out there. But I'm seeing that now. I just got BMW recently as well, and that does exactly the same. It'll tell you where to charge. It'll tell you if the charger's full or not, and it'll tell you the price of the charge you're about to drive at, so you can make your choices. So yeah, I think the last 2 or 3 years, what was potentially a desert of chargers outside of Tesla has disappeared. You can almost charge anywhere. Every motorway service station seems to have ultra rapids now, 150 kilowatts. You've got the GridServe and Ionity with their big hubs dotted around the country as well. Charging is now in public just seems to be a non-issue. Just get in the car, drive, and charge when you need to.
Well, I found that was when I've done some of the EV rallies with Green Fleet, and actually loads of the other teams have been planning and stuff, and I've just winged it, and it's like, well, there's going to be a charge. There's going to be, you're pretty much within 20 miles of a charger wherever you go now, if not closer. Even Wales, which is quite sparse for chargers, has got a lot more of them now.
Yeah, I mean, I did an experiment recently with the ZapMap app, and certainly ZapMap is a great app to get. As is, I'll mention another one, a Better Route Planner, ABPR. If you search for that on Google or on an iPhone, that works similarly to ZapMap, but what it allows you to do is put your journey in, and it will tell you where to charge on the way. So if you're not used to driving long distance, you want to do a specific one, that will give you the confidence of knowing how to plan your journey in advance. But I took the ZapMap recently, said focus on only 100 kilowatt chargers or above, and show me the whole country, and you can't see the country for the dots of where the chargers are. There's just masses and masses of them now. So I think it's much less of a problem. And I think a lot of the problems that people perceive with EVs are historical problems that are just perpetuated onwards.
Yeah, and I mean, when you see things like the queues in, say, Devon or Cornwall, that's why I did that in the EV9 to prove it. There's not, I mean, there's a lot of chargers. It's just a lot of people hit the same charger because they don't think that there are other ones. So you might think, oh, Exeter's got lots of chargers and they're busy, but you might find 2 miles up the road, the next junction, it's not motorway services, but there's an Ionity where there's like just a shop or something that's open to the public where they've actually started to put them along the motorway networks, not in the obvious places now.
Precisely. And I think we talked about the history there on charging and public charging, but I think people are worried about the future. And the question I have to deal with quite a lot, and I'm sure you get exactly the same, is do I really want to be involved in this electric car gubbins? Because I think hydrogen cars just waiting to come in the wings. And I know that's a question that gets asked quite a lot. What's the status? What's the answer to that question?
Well, I mean, if you look at hydrogen refuelers, I think there's less than 5 in the UK. So if you think it's bad for EV charging, think about hydrogen refuelers. And there's a lot of hidden costs with hydrogen. I mean, one, it's kind of well-to-wheel efficiency is not great. So you may as well, if you do it green, truly green hydrogen, by the time you make the hydrogen from water, you lose every stage of the process, you lose energy, which means it actually costs you a lot to do it. So the same with grid capacities. It's like if you want to do all with hydrogen, it would take almost double the grid capacity to make the hydrogen. So you may as well just put it straight in a car. And actually, you think now the Toyota hydrogen one will do about 300 miles. Well, there's a lot of EVs that can do 300 miles to a charge. And I mean, that's the one thing that people worry about, there not being enough infrastructure over the time as that. But as ranges are getting bigger, how many times do you actually public charge?
Yeah, I think it's related to another question, talking about charging in public, is that people have this concept, and I think it's a historical thing about, we used to driving petrol cars. We used to getting in the car. We don't care about how much fuel's in it. We get in it. We see the little yellow light on saying we need fuel. We go to the next petrol station. We fill up in 5 minutes and off we go.
Yeah.
And we've spent a lifetime of living with cars that do that. And the problem we think of now as we start to move towards the future is thinking of that we want to continue doing that.
Yeah.
And electric cars, you cannot do that. That doesn't necessarily mean that electric car is worse, or what it actually means is we have to change slightly the way we use them. So, I mean, the electric cars are all about ABC. If you aren't moving, make sure you're charging it. So, I, for one, I never, and I'm sure you're the same, I never stop to charge my electric car. I always charge when I happen to be stopped anyway. So I'm doing a toilet break or a lunch break or something, or it's sat at my house, I'm charged. Every morning I get in the car, it's already full. I never have to think about going to charge it. I plug it in. Hydrogen seems to kind of work on those fears that we want to drive our cars the way we've always driven them, and hydrogen gives you the opportunity to do that. But as you've said, people give all sorts of reasons. It's the grid can't cope with charging electric cars. It's like, well, the grid can't cope with making hydrogen because that's how you make green hydrogen. And if it's not green, you're still burning fossil fuel to do it, and you're wasting your time. You might as well keep putting your petrol in your car.
Yeah, and the other thing is, certain things that people forget is the actual pressure of a hydrogen tank in a hydrogen car is something ludicrous like 800 bar. So if you look, most hydrogen cars have an expiry date on their tank.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that inspected, because it's just such a sheer, high pressure device. It's like
you don't want that leaking, do you?
Yeah, when you think 700 bar, 800, then you compare that, your tires are at 3 bar. So it gives you an idea of how much pressure that is.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, there's the 5 questions, and I'm sure it's not all the 5 questions all the questions that anybody's going to ask in a car showroom, but it's certainly some of the 5 key ones. Thanks for that, for sharing your insights and expertise on that with us. It's really enlightening to hear that and engage with that today. I hope that anybody watching this interview has got some idea of how they might deal with those questions if they were asked that. I might put some links on the post here, maybe to things like maybe hydrogen efficiency, which is good. I'll put links to ZapMap and all those, so we've got them in there as well. And also, if you're interested on maybe engaging with Kevin or getting together with Kevin, then I'll put a link for him in the comments as well. And if you're interested for some reason in how Navigator, our DMS system, might be able to help your dealership as well, I'll put a link in there as well. So finally, thank you, Kevin, for joining me today. For everybody else, stay tuned for more discussions and interviews we'll do in the future. But until then, keep driving safe and drive electric. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.